What do you think of when you hear the word faith? If you're religious, you might hold faith in high regard, as it's probably foundational to your beliefs. If you're an atheist, you might see faith as backwards and contrary to reason. But for the Christian existentialist philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, faith is the result of a long and difficult process, making it more elusive than we usually think. Faith is a movement or a journey. It's not like one day you wake up and you decide to think about things differently and declare that you have faith. It's not the result of some religious revelation that instantly turns you. No. Kierkegaard expects that this journey to true faith is divided up into different stages that must be gone through. The funny thing is, Kierkegaard in this book claims that he himself has not been able to make the movement towards faith, despite him being a Christian. However, this maybe could relate to the pseudonym he writes this book under, Johannes de Silentio. So maybe he's saying Johannes, the fictional character, hasn't made the journey of faith yet, or maybe he really is saying that he himself hasn't. I honestly don't know. Kierkegaard is a confusing writer at times. I, for my part, can indeed describe the movements of faith, but I cannot perform them. Thankfully, Kierkegaard gives us a story to use to highlight these different movements of faith, which we'll be following. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever wanted something in life that was just impossible to get? This attitude is the first movement for Kierkegaard. He describes a young guy in love with a princess, and he is in love with this girl. Literally obsessed. But she's a princess, and this guy's just a random nobody. So this love is impossible in his mind. Still, he will silence these doubts and focus so intensely on this one impossible wish. For the knight will then, in the first place, have the strength to concentrate the whole of his life's content and the meaning of reality in a single wish. As Kierkegaard says in a footnote, this requires a lot of passion. We all have lives and duties and chores and jobs, but have you ever had some wish or desire that almost completely overshadows that? Like, yeah, you'll go to work and exist, but really in your mind you're completely obsessed with that one thing. That might be a more modern day analogy. But this wish is impossible in this physical, finite world. And by just having this mindset of focusing on this physical, finite world, you're going to be hit by sorrow when you have this desire that can't possibly be met. So where does our knight move to now when he or she cannot get what they want from the physical world? Resignation. This person moves to become a knight of infinite resignation. The knight of infinite resignation essentially renounces the finite and physical world and all that was previously desired. Recognizing their desires as impossible to meet, they find solace in the infinite and spiritual by renouncing the finite and material. Everything is possible spiritually speaking, but in the finite world, there is much that is not possible. This impossibility the knight nevertheless makes possible by his expressing it spiritually, but he expresses it spiritually by renouncing it. Throughout the history of philosophy, we've kind of seen this tug of war between the infinite, spiritual, and universal against the finite, material, and situational. This could be seen even by comparing Plato's obsession with the world of forms and Aristotle's emphasis on the physical world. So one might see this movement as an individual embracing the spiritual by renouncing the material. This is the knight of infinite resignation, and you might run into religious people who are these knights. They may not pay much care or attention to the world we live in now, but obsess over the afterlife or the spiritual or the eternal. And there is motivation to do this and become a knight of infinite resignation. Life can be tough. It can throw things at you and really hurt sometimes. There's a certain solace in running away to the spiritual, where you can't be hurt or disappointed by the material world. In infinite resignation, there is peace and repose and consolation in the pain. That is, if the movement is made properly. Now for Kierkegaard, it is necessary to experience this phase before reaching faith. It is necessary to become a knight of infinite resignation before becoming a knight of faith. So already we see a lot of people claiming to have faith that may not have gone through this step already. But finally we get to the knight of faith. So our poor guy, he obsessed over the princess, then renounced her and the material world in favor of the spiritual, becoming a knight of infinite resignation. Finally, he returns to the princess believing that they'll fall in love. He does exactly the same as the other knight. He infinitely renounces the claim to the love which is the content of his life. He is reconciled in pain, but then comes to marvel. He makes one more movement, more wonderful than anything else. For he says, I nevertheless believe that I shall get her, namely on the strength of the absurd, on the strength of the fact that for God, all things are possible. Now we see why Kierkegaard, or this fictional character he's writing under, claims that he can't make this movement, because it's pretty radical. I mean, take an impossible wish you have, like, I wish I could turn invisible. something that I'm 100% certain I could never do. This is not a gambling thing where we're dealing in probabilities. No, in your mind you need to be certain with a capital C that you cannot get this thing. And yet through faith, on the strength of the absurd, you believe that you will get that thing. That seems pretty difficult. This movement would require a lot of strength, determination, passion, and possibly a little madness. On this, the Knight of Faith is just as clear. All that can save him is the absurd, and this he grasps by faith. Kierkegaard actually describes what this Knight of Faith might look like in our society. Would he or she be a monk? Some magnificent prophet? No. Actually, this Knight of Faith would be pretty unremarkable. They'd go to their job like everyone else, look like everyone else, but they'd be content and happy in the world. The moment I first set eyes on him, I thrust him away, jump back, clasp my hands together and say half aloud, "Good God, is this the person? Is it really him? He looks just like a tax gatherer." For Kierkegaard, all things are possible under God, so to have faith would be to believe in the impossible becoming possible, even in the physical world. It's to come home and find dinner ready for you. Go to your job and find out that you've been promoted to CEO randomly. And yes, even getting the princess. Thus to live joyfully and happily in this way every moment on the strength of the absurd. Every moment to see the sword hanging over the loved one's head and yet find, not repose on the pain of resignation, but joy on the strength of the absurd. That is wonderful. Now guys, let me know if you consider yourself a Knight of Faith. Because me personally, I can't make that movement. I can't even make the movement to become a Knight of Infinite Resignation. But hey, maybe you can. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it as it helps out the channel, and subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when the next video drops. Thank you all for watching, and I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.